How's it going, everybody? Um, Usually I'd have some sort of music, but is for today. I'm going to I'm going to attempt to. I guess that's not going to work. I'm going to try to talk about some stuff that I'm still in process of trying to get this stuff together, trying to collect my findings. But um, I have somewhat of a theory, and this is something I've been thinking about for a good minute. But thankfully, I'm not the only one. And so, uh, I was looking at this thing of these findings, and I was trying to connect the idea of racism and classism. Now, well, some of us we understand the connections between racism and classism and how it's correlated. It was correlated in the past, and how it's most likely correlated to now. Now, I'm going to see how I can connect these my references. Um, I want to make another video that's far more organized, but um, Jordan Peterson had this video. It was from this guy named it's Central Truth. That's his channel, and he has a video called Jordan Peterson Too Nice with a question mark and then Rejected with a period. And near the 12-minute mark, he suggests this fella. His name is Daley Martin. Daley Martin, and Daley Martin's finding was that there's this connection between not social inequality, economic and inequality, and homicide. And so I watched this video. I'm going to be seeing more about him, and trying to check out him and this lady named Margot Margot Wilson, and Martin Daly, and they have these their findings are very interesting. Um, Now, one of the things I guess I want to kind of quote, and that's there near the end of his video called it's from this guy named MC Master UTV, and his video is called Dr. Martin Daly Risk Taking Inequality and Homicide, and that's from his video. I'll see if I can put the links and stuff in the description. But one of his points were at least near the latter half, he was saying how men try to the men that do kill, they kill for social competition, and they also the second reason is material composition, and of course there's other reasons, but he said the main reason, one of the biggest reasons, is social competition. And he says if you break it down, it is social, the status, the challenge of a status, public insult, or somebody dish you, someone insults you in front of people, and another one is a failure to show difference, which my guess is the failure to back down. Um, and I'm sorry, to reference Jordan Peterson's talk, he kind of says the same thing. Is that when income inequality becomes to be further separated, where there are those who are very secure in their position, and the rest of them have become so insecure in their economic position, they start to battle over uh, social yeah, more so of the social qualities of living, and so they battle over social status. And he says during that time, the further economic difference or divide increases, the more likeliness for a violent altercation to occur, based off from the most disagreeable person. He said something. It was very interesting. It was from that same video. It was from MC Master. No, it's not. It was from the 20 minute mark of Essential Truths, Jordan Peterson, Too Nice and Rejected. And it's at the 12-minute mark, around there, where he mentions that because of those inequalities, it increases the likeliness of violence. And he says that Martin Daly and Margot Wilson, they made this the heck, it was I don't want to call it experiment, but they did tests in Chicago. So I live in Chicago. I don't live in the heart of Chicago or in the city, uh, and I kind of say thankfully because it's dangerous for that reason. Um, because according to Daly, these interactions, and I'm just a what do you call it, YouTube personality. I don't have a degree. I just want to let people know that I don't have a degree. I don't have anything like that. But this kind of lies over my ambitions. My ambitions is to dispel the air of what they suggest about these low income neighborhoods to be just like black, and that is just the culture, and that is just it's just us, and we're just a cursed people and stuff like that. And of course, they're not saying that, but they are suggesting that the black culture just is violent, innately violent. And I just want to just take that away because there are actual competent reasons. That's not just this is our culture and we're violent, and it perpetuates this cycle of considering the black man as violent. And no one's suggesting specifically the black man, but they use terms to suggest that people of color are in association with violence, deviancy, um, um, unclassy behavior. And so this is why I wanted to connect classism with racism, because in the past they used to try to attribute not just us, not just persons of color, but also other whites. The Irish were in the past, they were considered not as refined as the regular whites. And even then they use these issues where they say like the trailer trash or the trailer whites are not the regular whites, whatever that means, because they're still white. They might still be Polish, German, Irish, Scandinavian, Bohemian, whatever. They may still be a part of that, but oh, that's them. No, that's from what I could tell, an economic issue. Now, now what he says is the likeliness for violence increases with social economic inequality. Now, given that, it made me consider gentrification because um, I seen from another one. It was another. I was curious and I checked out this thing called CMAP, socioeconomic shifts in the Chicago region, and I learned from some of those findings is that they have the poor whites and the okay kind of whites, the ones who make from 50,000 to near 100,000, they they have left. They have left parts of Chicago. But the interesting part is that those over 100,000 who make that annually, they are entering into Chicago. And another thing that I did find was that even though the rate is not as high, um, the poor blacks. Now, of course, to me, it makes so much sense to me that poor blacks leave, and at the same time, as I said, the ones who are within the 50 K mark and those around the 100K mark, they're leaving too. And another thing I did find interesting was that they are entering into Washington D.C. I was wondering that, and then I did my search on that one, but that I'll talk about that in a second. And one thing I figured out could be, because this isn't a racist issue, it can be, because if that was the case, and here's another point I really do want to make is that Hispanic and the Asian population. But I'll hold that for a second. If this was a racist issue, then it would be similar to to me, it would be similar to the Hispanic and their Asian population, where not only poor Asians and the poor Hispanics are entering into these places, the people who are within the 50 to 100K mark or annual 100K mark, and those over the 100K mark are all entering into Chicago. That's for the Asians and that's for the Hispanics. And to me, what comes to my mind is that they both have good community. They both have strong community, and they both are to me, immigrants, to me, the idea of immigrants. Um, so given they have a strong community, it made me consider the idea that is um so the problem can't be with people all across the board, but I was considering is the issue that we face within maybe even Chicago is the issue uh blacks and whites, and is that issue classism, you know, because again, if it was a white versus black, then all of them would be going, all of them in terms of the socioeconomic class, they would be going, and those who don't, um, those who are black would be leaving, but they're not. You know, it's now use for me. I see based off those statistics, and again, I show it on the description. Far more, there is almost an exponentially higher degree of wealthy whites entering into Chicago. And to me, it's like, would they go in dilapidated places? Uh, no, but they would if the places were gentrified, would be replaced and brought into better households. But that would in itself will force poorer neighborhoods out because I'm thinking it would increase the property value. And so, given that, it made me think about Monte Films where he spoke about the effects of gentrification, and he spoke about I think he was commenting off this lady in her and her steals, you know, from these poorer neighborhoods like the chopped cheese, and because he's in Harlem. I'm not sure. Is it New York? See, that's the thing. I'm not too familiar with these areas, but I'm guessing it's in New York. Just thinking. And so, given that these places are, how is it that wealthy whites are entering in these places, and they're saying it's a steal? Well, the property value, all that stuff is poor. Is to meet the needs of the poor at the time. And on top of that, these businesses and these property owners, they need to survive. They need to make money. So when these people from richer neighborhoods pour into it, and then people who invest and make up these shops and stuff, and the property increases, and it or that property is something that people cannot keep up with. And but it is something that these wealthier people who enter in these places, clean these places up, and they essentially boost the profits for not only themselves but the businesses around them. It forces other people out. You know, forces people who can't afford it out. You know, forces people. But I learned from the that what you call it that website that in Washington D.C. Why is it that when blacks are entering, but not within the city, they're entering around it? Those who actually are, and even before people actually start entering, there's been this divide between what is it the eastern side, which was the I'm thinking it's the wealthiest side, and the western side, which is the poor side, and that side, from what I can tell, was racially divided as well. And so, um, I want to say in the past it was considered to be majority black, but that's not the case anymore. And also they are in themselves are fighting against gentrification because they understand the effects, and it's not really forcing people out as much as this. I believe is the heck, I forget the term that they use. Um, I think they said it was it's not forcing them out, but it was I don't know. I don't know. Sorry, I'm not too sure about that one. But it's in the links. So but going back to Chicago, you know, from the gentrification, like yes, it's pushed people out and stuff like that. But let's go back into the cities. So why is the cities so violent? You know, and that's something I'm looking at. I'm still looking at. Um, they say from what's his name? Daly. He mentioned this these lyrics. He mentioned these lyrics. And it's from Nick Grabanit called "Born in Chicago," and he says the last verse. Well, now the rules are right, and there's someone left to play the game. All my friends are going, and things just don't seem the same. And his interpretation was that declaration that living living a rule bound life makes sense when the social environment around me is stable, but it ain't. And the rules don't apply anymore. So arguably that's the reason why we see the violence we see in the worst neighborhoods like Chicago. So given that they don't play by the rules. I mean, he live in a rule bound society. If society if society is dictated by the amount of economic stability, then that's one of your issues. But there's a conflict because if the issue is economic opportunity, not so much economic outcome, A, where's the opportunity? Um, B, how does that conflict with the culture? And C, if gentrification is how those economic opportunities can come, how does that help out the residents already living there, and how does that integrate the culture? Because maybe somebody may think we are bringing economic stability. You know, all you need to do is take these jobs. And that, or the people who are coming in with their money, not just with their money, but with they live there, they come here, they set up shop, not just with their stores, but also they buy expensive homes or they set up expensive homes, and they now have assets here. They got stuff that is representative of their money, I guess a partial representative of their money or their wealth. And I say, correct me if I'm wrong. These are just kind of like, I'm honestly theorizing because I'm still trying to figure this out. But I was just wondering if that's the case. If the case is the if the what was it, the economic life, because I'm looking at this, well, now it's about life expectancy, but I'm not thinking about that at the current moment. The clash of culture and gentrification, because not only do they replace the residents because they can't afford it, but they also replace the culture that's there. And it may be considered propaganda because he I don't know if he's still speaking about it, but he used to speak about it. And is how does that how does that integrate with the people that's there already there? Do they care? Do they just want a steal? To take advantage of the economics at the time, or is it just money and also stability? It reminds me of this place called Bricktown. I could be wrong about it. I don't know the history of Bricktown, but I went there for a what the heck was it? It was a show. It was a show, and what show was that? I can't remember. It was a good show too. I can't remember. Um, yeah, I can't remember, but I think it was called Bricktown. And like right next to Bricktown was still a poor neighborhood. And so one of the things is if that's not proof of economic disparity, I don't really know what is. I mean, I kind of do know what it is, but for the sake of the saying, it's very clear. If people who are exceedingly exorbitantly wealthy are living to piss poor people, and I don't mean to say it in a nasty or mean way, but they're living right next to you. These people are living right next to you. Then I don't know, like, is that more of a physical representation of where you live, where you're at? And given that, um, he mentioned another one. I can't remember the artist, but he was saying like, if you don't got nothing to lose, if you don't have anything, you don't have anything to lose. So what other thing? And one of the things he did mention was that only thing that they have to lose is their social place, their social status. And so, given that, that's of value. If they don't have anything else, and also I did learn that the homicide rates were different among what was it the married, different among the divorce. Well, somewhat consistent, and the widowed. And they said the widowed were most, what as he says, the nastiest than the nastiest. Like they had a higher rate of violence or higher rate of I guess, do I want to call it high rate violence? Well, they were the ones within the range of, I believe, I did write this down. Yeah. Um the widow, like between the numbers of 25 and I'm sorry, 15 and 29, the widowed seem to be the highest. But then as the past 29, it seemed to like lower the rates. How and I could be wrong again. I'm gonna point that to you the links. But it shows the divorce and the widow. I mean, the single men at the time of 15 to 29, while they were not as high as the divorced or the widowed men, and this is, I believe, is men against unrelated men. Um, it was not as high. It increased at the age of at the age range of 30 to 44, and then increased after that. So after past 44 to 59 to onward, and it seemed that while the widowed person who killed, which is again is very interesting because the widowed person lost somebody. Now, one of the lower ones seemed to be the married person. So they have somebody, they have something to lose. The widow person doesn't have anything to lose. And I have to see what the divorced person had, but I want to say it was second to the widowed person. And again, these aren't just racial issues, these are male issues. And if we try to break this down, it's like even racism in itself can be broken down to a human issue. You know, is it going to be a bit skin? It could be, but a lot of these things can be broken down to simpler, and well, not so much simpler terms, but I guess simpler in terms of the human experience. Um, and it's just you can't approach either side with ignorance. You just can't. You need to, even if it is racially charged, it has to be. Um, you have to see why that's the case. And so, given that, you know, it seemed like single men from 15 to 29, they weren't as likely to commit weren't as likely, even though it was still a number. They increased after their 30s to the 40s. They increased and then they went back down, which can't say. Well, I mean, I guess again, it makes sense. Single men, they're not with anybody. They didn't lose anybody. Um, so 30 to 44, my suggestion, and that's just a suggestion, is that their time is very there. They're late, you know. So given if social stability, socioeconomic stability, you know, just in itself is social, economic, social with the society, with people around you who you socialize with, and economic, your money's well. Um, when that's more stable, you're stable. You're not going to be committing as many crimes. Another thing, I didn't write this down. I forget what it was called, but it was suggesting, and I'm gonna watch that again. It was a suggestion about Jordan Peterson that it's not solely that poverty isn't solely the cause for homicide, but I'm gonna still look into that. Um, at the so I'm sorry. From one of my notes, because I took notes while I was doing this, it was saying how he was suggesting like the relation between risk, not risk and reward, but I guess in a sense it is risk and reward, but um the relation of that to homicide, you know. So they say if the outcome or variance pay is high, then I think that's inversely related. So it's not going to be the level of competition will be high because you know what are you going to gain. But if the um, payoff is high, the payoff variance is high, and competition is high, you know. So one of the things that Jordan Peterson used, and I got to cut it off because I got to leave real kind of soon. Um, he says that he used an example. Now let's say in these social settings, a person uh, given like you know these pressures, these income inequalities, there's pressure, there's competition, there's less of a likeliness of being of a disagreeable there's a higher likeliness that less um, disagreeable activity will yield a lower um, active violence. So it's gonna take the more poor people are, the less of a reason that they'll have not to get violent. You know, uh, or is that the opposite? I think it's more so like you know, the likeliness of violence will occur, and the likeliness of just give me a reason. All I need is a reason. You know, it could be something small. You know, that will incite some violence. And so, given that, let's say some altercation happens, one guy kills another, and given the environment, nobody says anything. So let's say it's chopped down to an active aggression. I mean, not an active aggression, active self-defense. Sorry, self-defense. Says it's chopped out to an active self-defense. Now, what's the other person going to do? Um, he's going to be in this jail. He's going to get out for good behavior. So instead of 2 years, he's going to be doing what, 15 months or something like that. At least that's based off the video. He leaves. He comes back into society. He didn't. He, in a sense, he cheated this. He didn't cheat the system. He just, got off by good behavior and came back, and now his status is higher. Why? He he nobody said anything, and also it's fuzzy anyway. But yeah, even worse that nobody says anything. The second thing is this person killed a person. He was gonna have a certain amount of time to be in jail for the thing. He comes back, so now he's a guy who's not to mess around with. So just consider that, like, a guy. He's walking around, hey, I just killed somebody and I'm still walking out. The justice system can't figure out if he actually did it, or if he maliciously did it, or if it was an act of self-defense. Can't say that. Nobody's testifying for that fact. So now that guy has status. He's the guy, like, especially if that's the case, if it's not about what you have, but who you are in relation to other people, you're the guy who killed somebody and everyone else isn't. So of course your status boosts. You have people fear you now. That's not, and it's sad because maybe this would have been solved if people had more opportunity. But again, gentrification helps a lot, but at what cost? You know, and Black people have always been trying to preserve their culture, whatever that is and wherever it is. It's just, and that's another thing I kind of want to talk about is the preservation of culture and socioeconomics. Does that mean if you're poor, is that more of a reason to stick with your poverty because it's attached to your culture? Is it? Might be. Some people made food based off their poverty. In the Great Depression, the Reuben was made in response to, I believe, the Great Depression. Cheap food, cheap cabbage, cheap corned beef was a cheap meat. So you had that on rye. I believe rye was cheap, and now you have a fanciful cultural sandwich. So again, it's not in an economic. If people look at it economically, it's like, get the job. But also, if you look at it, there's just this point. If you look at it from a cultural standpoint, it's like these people who are outside my culture are coming through. And again, we've seen stuff like Avatar, we've seen all this other stuff where people believe that culture is actually more important than someone else's economic stability or economic appraisal or survival, which is weird because it's lofty, even though it's not. People don't really agree with it. It's interesting. I'm sorry. I wish I could talk more. I have to get going. I don't know. Talk to me about it. And I really find this very interesting. Classism and racism together. Are they intermingled? Do people still believe it, but believe it based off a disservice to information or myths? It's very interesting. And also, how's that tied to religion, to our religion, this cultural Christianity? we suggest some, God respects some people and doesn't respect other people, or the people of Ham versus the people of Shem, or um, what was it? Culture. I was gonna say something else, but I can't remember it. All right, that's all I got. See you guys later.